Hello and welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish. Today is Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. And as always, we're gathered to do our work on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Our first order of business under delegations or petitions proclamations is a proclamation request. Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness is proposed to be March 26, 2023. Do we have a delegation attending, either physically or online?
Yes,
Online.
hello, my name is Sonia.
Oh, hello. Well, I will thank you very much for joining us. I will turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sonia Ali, and I'm the Provincial Manager of Programs and Services at the BC Epilepsy Society. And I'm honored today to accept a proclamation designating March 26, 2023 as International Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness in the District of Squamish. Epilepsy is one of the most common neurological conditions, yet it has the least recognition in society. 1 in 10 people will experience a seizure at some point in their life, and 1 in 100 people will develop epilepsy at some point in their life. Epilepsy Awareness Month is coming soon and will be held in March, culminating in International Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness on March 26th. We hope that everyone in the District of Squamish will wear purple on this day and help us raise awareness of epilepsy in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for our presenter here, or if anyone would like to have a motion? Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. I do have a quick question, and I'll share that I am prone to fainting, and as a young person, doctors suspected that I might be epileptic. Thankfully, that diagnosis didn't pan out. So I wonder, Sonia, if you might give us a very quick and high-level explanation of what epilepsy is.
Oh, for sure. So epilepsy is a medical condition that causes recurring seizures, and there are many different types of seizures. So some seizures can happen all over the brain, and those are called generalized seizures. And the seizure types can be absence seizures, which can look like someone is daydreaming. So it's just a lapse of concentration or awareness. Then you have tonic-clonic seizures, and that used to be called grand mal seizures. So that's probably what comes to mind when most people think about the words epilepsy or seizures. And that's when somebody has convulsions and falls to the ground and has rhythmic jerking of their body. Then you have atonic seizures, which are also known as drop seizures, which can look like someone has fainted. You have tonic seizures, which is a sudden increase in muscle tone, and then myoclonic seizures, where the person has a brief jerking of a muscle or group of muscles. And then there are also seizures that happen in one area of the brain, and that is known as focal seizures. And so these seizures can be focal aware seizures, where the person has full consciousness during the seizure, and that can happen in different areas of the brain. So it can involve, somebody uh, seeing kind of an auditory hallucinations or seeing things or picking at their clothes and that kind of symptom. And then you have focal impaired awareness seizures where the person has no consciousness. They're not aware of what they're doing and they can wander around. It can look like they might be using substances because they're wandering around and picking at their clothes and they're not aware of the situation. And then with seizures, it's important to have knowledge of seizure first aid. So our organization actually provides that for free for schools, workplaces, organizations, community groups across the province. And just some things for seizure first aid. You want to stay calm, time the seizure. So for that, it would be the active seizure. So for a tonic-clonic seizure, you would start the timer when the person is having the seizure, and then when the active seizure stops, and you would stop the timer. And this is important because if a seizure lasts for longer than 5 minutes in length, you would want to call an ambulance. You would want to move harmful objects away from them that they might bang up against, or if they have a seizure type that makes them wander around, you want to gently guide them away from hazard. So if they're at the top of the stairs, you want to guide them away from the stairs so they don't fall down, but then let them move freely in a safe environment without restraining them. And then also you don't want to restrain someone having a tonic-clonic seizure. And then you want to turn them onto their side as soon as it's safe to do so, so that they're in the recovery position, and then that way they can allow drool to fall out of their mouth instead of pooling down at the back of their throat. And then you want to just be reassuring and comforting to the person until their awareness is fully regained, and then you can tell them that they've had a seizure, that everything's going to be okay, and that you're there for them until they're fully recovered.
Fabulous. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
That's all I had, Mayor. So if there's no other questions, I'll move the staff recommendation.
See no other questions. So Councillor French moves the recommendation, which is that March 26, 2023 be proclaimed as Purple Day in the District of Squamish to promote epilepsy awareness. As our seconder, Councillor Stoner seconds. Any comments on this or no? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for coming to present to us today and for all your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So the next item is a proclamation request for Public Works Week. And do we have presenters online or in person for this?
Good evening. Yes, I'm your worship.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Mr. Storey. And is there a presentation, or were you going to speak, or would you like to speak to it briefly?
Through the chair, yeah, I'll just give a brief overview of it. There's no presentation.
Yep,
Public
thank you.
Works Week is basically something that is celebrated across North America and Canada by local governments. The intent is to inform and educate the public about the role of public works, to invite people in and show them what it is we do, and answer some of their questions, and reach out to some of the local elementary schools to show the kids what a potential career could be like in public works, and how valuable it is to the community. And so this is just our request to proclaim this week and hold some activities to do that.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions, or go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for being here, Mr. Storey. And I see Ms. Maury is in the audience as well. Public Works Day in the past has been an amazing celebration that our Public Works Department has put on. It was waylaid by COVID for a few years, and appreciate the comeback that it made last year in the form of the parade. I think personally, one of the downsides was it was harder for council to participate because we used to come. And so I'm curious if there is any way that you would like council to be involved in this coming year for public works celebrations.
Through the chair, yes, we were talking about that, and we would like council to be involved. And we were also, one of the things we were considering is possibly taking council and some others on a tour of our water supply system.
All right, there's lots of nods around the table here, if you couldn't see that, Mr. Storey. So look forward to that. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. For most people, I think Public Works doesn't necessarily immediately bring fun and excitement to mind. This annual event, though, turns that theory upside down. I've seen kids get pretty excited about looking at and being around some of the cool machinery that the Public Works fleet has. So just with that framing, I'm wondering, will you talk a little bit about what our Public Works staff members get out of putting on the annual celebration? I'm sure there's something there.
Yeah, through the chair, it's, to a large extent, it's a sense of pride in our operators and our staff to show what they do, to showcase, like you said, the equipment that we have. And our staff are passionate about it. And so when they get to talk about it and show, the public and their children what it is we do, there's a lot of pride in that, and they take great pleasure in doing that. Especially when you can see invite an elementary school student into a piece of equipment and show them how it works. They also hope that maybe this is setting some of them up for the future, that they might consider a career in public works or as an operator.
I have seen that pride, for sure. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Stoner, are you moving the recommendation? Great. So Councillor Stoner moves, and and Councillor Hamilton seconds. Seeing no hands for comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. I'm looking forward to that event in May and subsequent tours or whatever you have in store for us. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Moving on, our next order of business is consideration of unscheduled public attendance. I don't see anyone. We only have staff in the auditorium here, so I think we're okay there. We have no public hearings tonight. Nothing under item 6 or scheduled timed items. We have the consent agenda, and now would be a time to pull anything. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I'd like to pull correspondence B2, please.
Okay, B2. Okay, yes, Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Herford, I wish to pull item number B1, Canadian Federation of Independent Business Correspondence. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll deal with those in the appropriate spot later in the agenda. So I will entertain a motion to receive the consent agenda. Councillor Stoner and Councillor Anderson seconds. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we have some consideration of council committee recommendations. So this goes back to our work last week, and these all do need to be done independently. So item 1 is a temporary use permit associated with the FortisBC proposed construction yard. And just looking to staff, do I need to read the entire motions out as we go through each one, or can I just go through them as they're listed on the agenda? I'm assuming there's no way I can group them.
No, you can't group them because people might have different considerations or conflict of interest. And it is typical that you would read them out.
Okay. So this is for temporary use permit TU 74 for the FortisBC proposed construction yard. The motion reads that council receive the FortisBC construction yard temporary use permit report for information and provide feedback as discussed at this February 14th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting, and that council directs staff to work with the applicant to resolve any comments prior to consideration of the temporary use permit. Councillor Stoner moves. Councillor Pettingill seconds. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, we did discuss it at length, all of these at length last week. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Next is temporary use permit 73, the FortisBC proposed workforce lodge. The council received the FortisBC Workforce Lodge temporary use permit report for information and provides feedback as discussed at this February 14th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting, and that council directs staff to work with the applicant to resolve all issues outlined, and that a decision is made by the province on Fortis's environmental assessment amendment prior to council consideration of the temporary use permit. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Greenlaw. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor French?
Thanks, Mayor. So I've spent this past week reflecting on our discussion of the temporary use permit from last Tuesday. And I want to take a moment to share some thoughts on my support for the motion. Our staff time and energy is valuable, and putting time and energy into a project that the Environmental Assessment Office could potentially reject isn't smart. Also not smart is forcing pipeline workers to live in hotel rooms and potentially scarce rental suites in our community if the proposed workforce lodge is rejected. I support our tourism industry, and I don't want tourists competing for hotel rooms with pipeline workers. The best and highest use, in my opinion, of our hotel stock is for tourists. With our rental vacancy rate as low as it is, I worry that some landlords might look out onto the horizon and contemplate evicting current service industry tenants to do very minor renovations, then advertise the units for rent again at potentially substantially higher rates which might seem quite reasonable to a well-paid out-of-town pipeline worker. So I'm supporting this motion because I think it's the appropriate thing to do at this point. And my support of this motion is an expression of support for the workforce lodge because I believe it's the best option for housing the pipeline workers who will be coming to our town.
Any other comments on this before I call the question? Councillor Anderson.
Also, I did not support this resolution on the last occasion, and I will be registering the same vote this time. And my primary concern is the signals that we send as a community. I share the concerns that Councillor French has just articulated. But during our discussion of this resolution, there was notions put forward by some of my colleagues that there may be other alternatives. A flotel was even mentioned. And I think we should be very cautious about putting forward scenarios like that in that context. There only is or may only be new dilemmas to resolve. So it's my primary concern is the signals we send out. We have some companies, local companies and companies from outside of town wanting to invest in Squamish. They have discussions about our culture here in this town, our receptivity to investment, how we address private sector companies and what they bring forward. So this is my concern as I registered no last time, and I'm otherwise share the general concerns of council, but just wish to register that we shouldn't be seen to be in the place of creating new delays and at this time, at this juncture. Thank you.
I'll recognize that we've got Councillor Pettingill and then Councillor Stoner. We did discuss this at length last meeting, but I'm happy to provide the space here. So Councillor Pettingill followed by Stoner.
Yeah, and my understanding is that our discussion and decision was to, we identified a number of challenges we had, more information we wanted to find, but we're not at a point where we're ready to make a decision. And that, weighing in on whether we think this is a good or bad idea in general is something that would happen after we have the information that we've asked for at the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to respond to one of my colleagues' comments that we can't be seen as creating new delays. And I just want to be very clear that I don't think the intention around this table, definitely not my intention, is to create delays. We have had conversations with this proponent for many years, and they didn't choose to bring forward a temporary use permit until recently. And so I think it's unfair to suggest that in any way we would be seen as creating delays when this has not come from this table or this organization, but rather the timeline that the proponents have chosen to put forward. My thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Anderson opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. The next piece is the downtown east-west cycling connector to Victoria Bridge topic. So and the motion is that the District of Squamish update the official community plan related to the routing for the proposed protected bike lanes from Main Street to Victoria Street as proposed in option 2 of the report from Community Planning and Sustainability dated February 14th, 2023. I will move that. If there's a seconder, Councillor French seconds. Any comments? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we've got 40480 Tantalus Road mixed-use development proposal. And the motion is that council receive the 40480 Tantalus Road rezoning report from Community Planning and Sustainability and incorporate feedback as provided during the February 14th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. that prior to consideration of first reading, a public information meeting be held and staff be directed to work with the applicant to resolve any comments provided by council. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. Any comments on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have the 2-year review of the short-term rental regulatory program. And the motion is that council receive the short-term rental regulation year 2 program review report from community planning dated February 14th, 2023 for information, and that council endorse the revised short-term rental interim temporary use permit policy attached to the February 14th, 2023 community planning report, and direct staff to proceed with the review of temporary use permit and short-term rental renewal applications as received, and that staff be directed to initiate a fees and charges bylaw amendment for short-term rentals. Let's move Councillor French. Was that a second by Councillor Stoner? Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And next we have item 9A. So bylaws, first 3 readings. And do we have a presentation for this? We do. Or a verbal update? Yep. Okay, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and the topic.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jonas Wolnischkes, Director of Community Planning. And today I'm just bringing or presenting on behalf of Melissa an amendment to the Advisory Design Panel bylaw. It's more of a housekeeping amendment. What we're proposing to do is establish a hybrid meeting protocol in the bylaw so that ADP members can attend either in person or virtually. Some have expressed interest attending in person, but we do have ADP members that don't live in Squamish that represent different organizations. And so they've seen this ability to attend electronically as a significant benefit and improves our quorum at the meetings. And the second amendment is to require the applicants to attend in person. And this is just from experience, seeing the technological challenges of applicants trying to put up their presentations in the meetings sometimes could cost 20 minutes or 15 minutes at the start of the meeting. So it saves everyone time if the applicants are here, where we can control the technology. And that's it.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, questions on this? Seeing none, I'd be happy to entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Do you want to speak to it? Oh, okay, I'll go to Councillor Anderson and then Pettingill.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to observe that the new provision, or the reaffirmed provision that I'll quote from it, in person for development, it'll be actually the beginning, project applicants must attend in person unless they are unable to do so due to extenuating circumstances and at the approval of the Director of Community Planning. I think this is very appropriate. I also think it's appropriate that that decision be made by the Director of Planning rather than the Chair of the Advisory Design Panel. It's very important, I think, that these presenters be there in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I think these changes make sense. One thing, and it's a tangent, which was why I'm, not suggesting that we change this, but it speaks to the things that the panel will consider. I think that may need some review, and I'm not sure if that's something we touch on in our strategic planning or where that would happen in the process. But I did note, for example, there's some attention to climate mitigation, but not climate adaptation, which seems fairly important for this role in terms of heat domes and so on, and making sure that as structures go forward. And so again, it doesn't belong here in this discussion, I think, but I wanted to just flag that for a future discussion.
Thank you for that. Noted, and we'll find a spot to discuss that in future, I'm sure. I'm seeing no other hands on comments. I'll venture mine. I was happy to see this come forward, and I think is a totally appropriate sort of modernization of the governing policies of this entity. And I think that I hope that continues to sort of help with attracting and retaining members of that group as well. Just make it easy to do that work that is quite important and valuable to our community. So thank you for bringing this forward. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we're on to staff reports from Community Planning and Sustainability. And I will turn it over to our staff. Please introduce yourself and the topic. The floor is yours.
Apologies, I can't do technology and talk at the same time, so thank you for your patience. There we go. All right. Good evening. My name is Shannon White. I'm the Integrated Solid Waste Specialist at the District of Squamish, and I'm here to present on the removal of commercial users on our residential curbside collection. So the resolution that's in front of Council is that the District of Squamish received for information the report dated February 21st, 2023 from Community Planning and Infrastructure on the removal of commercial users from residential curbside collection. So I wanted to provide a brief overview of our curbside collection and what that entails. So for those who aren't familiar, the curbside collection program in the District of Squamish is 3-stream: organics, recycling, and garbage. It's serviced by a 5-year contract, which is currently held by GFL, which is Green for Life. And it services single-family homes and most of the duplex and townhome complexes within Squamish. And it is financed by the solid waste utility fee, which is paid on an annual basis by those who receive the service. With regards to commercial and industrial and kind of the multifamily properties that are not captured by our current system, so often that's apartment buildings, for example, they are required to contract directly with a private hauler by our solid waste utility bylaw. We do not provide service. We do not provide a hauling service for this type of property. So they are not part of our residential curbside collection system. They often, but not always, have a centralized waste room, so that's how you might identify them. So why we're here today is that some commercial properties, as per the BC assessment, were originally serviced by our curbside collection when the program originated and have continually been part of our system, were never identified, and thereby we are working towards removing them as we've just become aware of this. And as per the community charter, the district does have to remove these properties because we are not allowed to provide subsidization or assistance to one business over another. And so district staff, upon council's acceptance of the resolution or moving the resolution, we will be mailing a letter to the property owners as well as hand delivering a letter to the tenants because there's not always direct communication between property owners and tenants. We'll also be, and they have 2 months or 9 weeks notice, and we'll also be delivering or mailing another letter with 1 month notice as a kind of a warning or heads up that this is changing. And GFL will be removing services at the end of April. And with that, I have the resolution again on the screen. And I just want to say that on March 14th, District of Squamish staff will be coming forward with a full system overview of our solid waste management, zero waste, circular economy. So I'm happy to kind of provide a more robust discussion and information at that time, just to have that on your radars. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, do we have any questions? Councillor French, then Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. I saw no indication that in 2024 and years beyond that the solid waste fee won't be charged to the properties involved. So will staff just confirm the property owners won't be charged the fee in future years?
Yes, thank you through the mayor. Yes, once they are removed from our solid waste utility system, they will no longer receive the annual fee charged on their utility bills.
Okay, and I also saw no indication in any of the documentation of the offsetting costs for the district. So is my conclusion correct there that there are offsetting costs here? And so for context, the amount of money brought in is about equal to the cost to empty the totes. So meaning the amount of money that the district would be paying to GFL to empty those totes is about equivalent to the amount of money that the district would collect from the property owners in solid waste fees?
Thanks through the chair. Yes, great question. This is a cost neutral and revenue neutral initiative. So the amount that we charge through our solid waste utility fee is, sorry, yes. So the district of Squamish will not be paying more once we remove them from the solid waste utility.
Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. I have Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much, Mayor Herford. I have a question about the timeline. You said the totes be removed by the end of April, and I'm wondering, when I read the report, it seemed to me like there was a reasonably compressed timeline for businesses to react. And I imagine there are some that would be able to react within the timeline, but perhaps some that might struggle to find the solution if the notice gets out to them 2 weeks late or something, and then they happen to have their totes collected on April 17th. It's going to be a short time period. Is there any scope for extending that time period, considering they've been on this, they've been unnoticed on the radar for probably a few decades? Is there a harm in giving a little bit more leeway to these businesses who might need to spend a couple more weeks reacting to this?
Thank you through the chair. So there was considerable discussion around the timeline. At this point in time, it was determined that 2 months was adequate. The property owners, but also the tenants in relationship with them, will need to. They do need to move their waste off their property. They can self-haul to our landfill, or they can contract with a private hauler. And there are a couple of options now in town, actually. The timing is also linked with when our utility bills are distributed. So they go out in May, I want to say, which is why the April 30th we had to have a real strict kind of cutoff. So there is that kind of link to the finance side of it.
You good? Okay, Councillor Greenlaw.
Thanks. Through the chair, I was just wondering if the district is going to be offering any guidance to these commercial users for how to move forward having their waste removed. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Good. Through the chair, great question. So in the letter that is also, there's an attachment in the resolution, we did try to provide as much guidance as we can. While we can't say you must contract or call so-and-so, we're unable to do that. We can kind of give them a couple of options. And so it does say, you can bring it to the landfill or find a hauler. And here are all the other, like the pieces of the bylaw that you need to meet. So you have to move the garbage off your property. You can't just keep it forever on your property. And there's a couple other stipulations in there. As well as we provided contact information for anyone who has follow-up questions. Staff are more than happy to talk to anyone that's been impacted by this.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Councillor Penigo.
And just for context, we're talking with commercial properties, but with residential size bins as opposed to large containers or something. Is that correct?
Thank you through the chair. Yes, so these are businesses. So they're we're being very black and white on who is impacted. So these are properties who are classified as business, light industry, by the BC assessment, who are currently have those 3 bins that I showed in the first image. And our truck is going to people's houses and then stopping by their property and servicing as well.
Okay, thank you. I had a question just about how this came to light. In the report, it says these properties have not been flagged before as utility information is in a different database in the BC assessment classification and require significant resources to manually assess. And then it says in late spring 2023, the 2 systems will be combined. So was preparation work for that combination is where these came to the surface? I just didn't quite link those 2 concepts for me.
Great, thanks. Through the mayor, that's an excellent question. This was an interesting thing that came to light. So it actually came to light through conversations with our current contractor through GFL. So as it says in the report to council, our utility billing lives in one database, and then the BC assessment and all the property, there's an actual name for this. I don't work in finance, apologies, finance team. So the other database is kind of separate. So to combine them and cross assess who's in both categories, if that makes sense, just takes staff time and capacity, which we've never dedicated to this this action. So that being said, the District of Squamish is moving towards again combining different databases and IT software, and someone can speak to that more than I can. But what will happen is that we will be able to see that same information in the same database. Probably, I think April, May is when we're looking at. So apologies if I butchered.
That's okay. I see Ms. Bockford pop up on our screen to. I think you did great though. But let's see. Do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Bockford?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you. And Shannon did a fantastic job at wrangling all that. So the taxes and utilities are implementing the Tempest system, which will combine both of those databases. So that will be forthcoming in the next few months.
Okay, and then the list of people that are being removed, or business entities that are being removed, we arrived at that just in partnership with GFL rather than having done this assessment, and them being combined is what prevents it from happening again. Is that what's happening here? Just to be clear.
Kind of. So what's going to happen? So through working with GFL, once it became identified by GFL in conversations, because it's a contract we're actively managing because it provides such a service to the community, we started to build out the list of who could be on, who could be affected, and then we dedicated staff resources to cross vetting that initial list. So there were some properties, for example, that we, in the initial kind of conversation list, that we took off because they're classified as residential. So that being said, is that no businesses have been added recently, at least probably in the last 10 years at least, to the system. So it's being done manually right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hamilton.
Has there been any communication yet with those businesses that will be impacted? Perhaps there's something in our databases that isn't somehow captured. Have they been asked or consulted at all? I don't mean asked for permission. Have they been informed yet?
Through the chair, thank you. Also great question. Communication's extremely important to everyone at the District of Squamish, including the Solid Waste Department. And at this point in time, no, they have not. They haven't received any communication. We wanted to have this meeting first, have it discussed here, make sure we've identified the right channels and process, and then we're going to be moving forward tomorrow. Letters are being put in the mail and hand delivered tomorrow morning. So, or they're scheduled, I should say, to happen tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, other than like age of business when they became part of our system, is there anything that's like unifying between these businesses? Are they home-based businesses or is it really just like a spattering of businesses across the district?
Thank you, through the chair. The businesses on the list, to my knowledge, none of them are actually home-based businesses. They are all businesses within the community.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Mayor, I'm just looking at the letter that's scheduled to go out and might want to have one last look at it before it goes. In the paragraph that's titled Last Day of Service, it reads GFL will remove all your totes. I think there's an extra your in there that might want to come out before we hit send on that.
Okay, fair enough. So Councillor Stoner is going to move the staff recommendation, and I think Councillor Hamilton seconds. Any further comments, Councillor Stoner, then Hamilton?
Yeah, just briefly, thanks to staff for their work on this and working with GFL to identify the challenge. I think communication is key, as you mentioned, Ms. White, and I think 9 weeks lead up is good, and I appreciate the fulsomeness that you've brought to your report in terms of due diligence of connecting with both the owners and the tenants of those buildings, because we do know that sometimes that's a disconnect. I suspect we will hear about this. I think one of the biggest pieces that is pertinent to me is fairness across all of the businesses in the community. And legally, we are not allowed to provide assistance to business. And I think that's the right that we're trying to wrong here, and recognizing that that is the most important piece of this work. So thanks for figuring it out and finding a good path forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing this forward. I mean, I'm sure it's an amazing amount of data that we have, and finding a handful of businesses that are on residential curbside collection seems like a needle in a haystack to say the least. I'm completely supportive of the transition. These commercial properties should be treated as commercial properties. I hope that we do treat, there may be some businesses in a particular situation and not being able to, for some reason, transition. And I hope we can we can acknowledge that we've had this service going for so long, and this may be an unexpected change for them that hopefully we can assist them in accommodating. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. I too am speaking in favor of the motion, and Councillor Stoner's question about who's involved here had me thinking about some of the businesses that have enjoyed this service and some of the places. And the one street that jumps out at me in particular is Industrial Way. And on collection day, there just should not be trucks on that street collecting those totes. It creates a bit of a traffic, not quite a nightmare, but it's just not an appropriate street to have totes. So in some ways, this is going to ease some traffic concerns in a few different areas. So I'm speaking in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Any other comments before I venture my own? Okay. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. I think it's not only appropriate that we do this, but it's necessary that we do this for the reasons outlined and assisting business. So I'm happy to see these changes, and I'm losing my voice. And really, I was right at the end as a short comment, but no, I'm very happy to see this move forward, and this will be a change for some folks in our community, and they have enjoyed the benefits of this, but they've enjoyed it for decades, and in some cases many decades, according to the report. So I'm comfortable with the amount of time that we've allowed for that to happen and how that aligns with the rest of our processes. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. And next up, Item 10A2, Squamish Lillooet Regional District Service Establishment Amendment Bylaws to adjust the maximum tax requisition for the Regional Invasive Species Control Services. And do we have someone speaking to this, or is it just the report unto itself? Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. As one of the Squamish directors to the Squamish Lillooet Regional District, I am happy to answer any questions that our council colleagues may have about this. But this is really an administrative process from the Squamish Lillooet Regional District. Their budget works on a service area by service area, which is slightly different than municipalities. But every 5 years, we have the opportunity to increase the maximum requisition that we can ask for under a select service area. This is an administrative process. As I mentioned, it doesn't actually mean that the budget is going to increase to this amount. It just allows the regional district to secure that much money if they so needed to. But the regional district still hasn't gone through their budgeting process. This just provides us the opportunity. And for the specific cost center that we're talking about this evening is for the regional invasive species work, which is the service area allows us to address invasive species at a regional level with Area D, as well as the District of Squamish.
Thank you for that context. Councillor Greenlaw.
Through the chair, Councillor Stoner, do you know if this includes marine species?
To my knowledge, in the 3 years that I've sat in that seat, we have not addressed marine species at this point. It's directly on terrestrial invasive species.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'll look for entertain a motion. Councillor Hamilton moves, and I will second. Any comments? No. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. There was no late agenda items. No correspondence action requested. However, we do have 2 items of correspondence referred from the consent agenda. So we'll do them in the order that they appeared in the consent agenda, just to create some order here. So I believe it was Councillor Anderson, you pulled item B, so that's 7B1, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business letter. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Herford. The letter concerns, it draws attention to the upcoming release of the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses' first annual Municipal Business Report. And it's a report that surveys findings from an examination of 8 cities across Western Canada, the smallest one being Kelowna, but I'll come back to that. And these cities are examined for their kind of in a report card format, if you like, but there's some recommendations that come from the report, and they're in 3 categories: revenues and expenditures. Of course, we do hear from small business community around budget time, and we do, in my experience over the last 2 councils, we do make the considerations that the CFIB are calling for. And perhaps we do better than some of those on the list here. Another category is red tape, reducing red tape. One of the recommendations is target timelines for processing times for licensing and permitting processing. And I think that we do not a bad job here. We have discussed this several times over the last couple of years and received fulsome reports from our Director of Planning. And we are aware that our planning department does track these things and is able to provide kind of reporting and measurement on these yardsticks. And the third category is small business friendliness. And the one I'll draw attention here to is municipalities should increase the accessibility of their budget consultation process to accommodate small business owners. And I feel here again, we do a pretty good job. We're pretty careful about considering our communications program during budget time. I'd like to come back, however, to the red tape category, where there's extensive discussion in the report on business licensing. And I feel that it is interesting enough such that I would like to recommend that we refer the report to staff, and at staff's discretion, perhaps directly to the economic development and planning departments who are involved in business licensing. And in this section of the report, smaller communities are referred to and their experience, such as Langford on Vancouver Island. There's a number of different approaches in business licensing, permanent business licenses, and regional business licenses, mobile business licenses, all of which we have discussed here in council chambers over the last several years. It's come up as a topic in presentations from economic development. There may be some fresh ideas here. At any rate, inspiration for ongoing discussion on the topic of business licensing. So for this reason, because of the interest of that topic, I feel I'd like to recommend, and I'll put forward a motion, that this letter and the CFIB report be referred to staff. And in that, I am considering planning and economic development. And if there's a seconder, thank you.
Just to clarify your motion, would it be to refer to staff for information or for subsequent direct action from your?
My intention, Mayor Herford, is simply for information, okay, for their awareness.
Thank you for that clarity. And with that, is there a seconder? Councillor French seconds. Any comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And then now we're on to the letter that was originally lived in 7B2, which was from the Squamish Cricket Club. And I think it was Councillor Stoner pulled that one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to highlight the correspondence that we received from Mr. McCarthy and the Squamish Cricket Club's request. The Squamish Cricket Club didn't incorporate until after the Brennan Park Fields and Lands Master Plan came to be. And so I think we kind of knew that that might be the case when we did adopt the Brennan Park Fields and Lands Master Plan, that we were engaging with current users, and there is a reality that there might be future users that would also need to be accommodated. And so I think this is one really prime example of that. My hope this evening is that we could refer this correspondence to staff for a response, as well as 2024 budget consideration. And I will speak to it if it's seconded.
Councillor French seconds. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, just on the budget consideration front, there is a budget ask in the proposal, and my intent is not necessarily that budget amount goes to our 2024 budget. I did have a chance to speak with Mr. McCarthy, and I think generally speaking, our intent has always been that there is at least some level of matching funding when we talk about recreation infrastructure. And we know that there are a lot of stresses at Brennan Park and a lot of requests. And so the Squamish Cricket Club is really interested in trying to do some fundraising for this. And so we did have a similar example with the Equestrian Society recently, where they were able to get some assurance from our staff that would allow them to pursue funding opportunities through grants. And I think something similar may be able to happen here, but I would just like that to be considered as part of staff's response in 2024 budget considerations.
Thank you. Any other comments on this one? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
I can support this, I guess, where we are now. I actually hope to ask a question just to understand where we are in the Fields Master Planning process and how we're incorporating new feedback. I had a similar meeting with Mr. McCarthy, and it does sound like they are very eager and could bring some funds. And I, as I recall from our fields discussion, there was mention of cricket fields and so on. So I'm not sure what's actually already in play. And I wanted to kind of understand just where we are and how sort of going forward, how we incorporate these sorts of things.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I think this is a good course of action as far as the matching fundings and so on. I like the general concept. I look forward to those discussions as we roll into our budget process. I want to make sure that we sort of employ all the expertise on our staff to avoid a pickleball situation here. And I think this motion sort of leads us in that in the correct direction. So with that in mind, I'll be supporting the motion. Sir, do you have another comment before, or Councillor Hamilton? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. And that that takes us through correspondence referred from the consent agenda. We have no minutes referred from the consent agenda. Were there any business arising from minutes? None. Committee minutes and reports? None. Any notice of motion? Seeing none. Now we're moving on to item 18, which is council staff in-camera announcements. We have one that didn't appear in our agenda package, so I'll read it out. So this is an in-camera announcement that the motion is that the District of Squamish execute a restrictive covenant at Honiak Park and adjacent water lot, stating that the district will not sell land without registering a statutory right-of-way for dike maintenance purposes, based on terms and conditions attached to the report from Engineering Services dated February 21, 2023, and the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the restrictive covenant substantially in the form attached. With that said, this motion was around the ongoing work to execute the diking project at Honiak Park. And that is the motion, and we're rising and reporting on it. We don't need to vote on that. That's done. So that's moving on now to unscheduled public attendance. We had none. Open question period. Open question period. Do you have any questions for us? Okay, thank you. And no one online. Council or staff announcements? Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to share that the Squamish Multi-Faith Organization hosted a multicultural day, and it was held on Saturday, the 11th at Totem Hall. The annual event, like most events the last few years, was on hiatus until now. The event was very well attended, and all the faith groups, or many of the faith groups in Squamish were represented at the event. I wasn't there for long, but the time that I was there certainly was great.
All right, thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, are you going for it? I see you reaching for the mic, but no hand. Okay, Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of attending the Vital Signs event. It's Community Conversation number 2, organized by the Squamish Community Foundation. And I'm aware that some of my colleagues had already participated in Community Conversation number 1 a couple of months ago. This is the 3rd Vital Signs exercise that the community has engaged in, led this time by Squamish Community Foundation, but by other agencies earlier. And I think it only gets better as far as the exercise of bringing community members together and engaging in a number of exchange of ideas around a number of topics is the best session that I've attended among the last 3. And I have to reflect that the mood was rather pessimistic. There was a lot of younger people there, a lot of younger people, including working for some of the local social services agencies with, and in particular, housing issues. And how will they manage to stay in Squamish, the community that they've been in for a while, come to love. And so that was a major theme, housing issues, but it wasn't the only theme. And I pass on this observation about it was a little bit of a pessimistic mood, is that when we have announcements that we are Canada's #1 in this and that, we should keep in mind that there's other perspectives and other measures for how we're doing. So it was a reminder that there are a lot of challenges for people in the community, and the Vital Signs it only gets better as an opportunity to reflect on these and chart a new course in a number of areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, a few of us, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, now attended LGLA, Local Government Learning Academy, I think is that acronym? Leadership Academy. We did a lot of learning, or at least I did, so that's where the L came in for me, I guess. But it is basically a lot of sessions on the legal frameworks and the sort of role and powers of being a municipal councillor. I think some of us had gone before, but it is recognizing that a lot of people come onto council with no experience on being a councillor. It's a really great place to learn about and to refresh your knowledge of your duties and your powers and so on, and also to network and hear what other communities are doing. And I just want to highlight that Mayor Herford and our CAO Linda Glenday were featured on a panel about District of Squamish's Code of Conduct. I think we've said it before, but many municipalities are struggling with this, and Squamish is a real leader in this space. So it was good to hear that talk. And my other colleague, Councillor Stoner, who is the co-chair of the BC Social Procurement Initiative, which again, Squamish has done some excellent work there and continues to. There's a short little introduction to the delegates there on that. So it's always great to see Squamish punching well above its weight and having us there and learning as well. So thank you to all of my colleagues who put forward those efforts there.
Thank you. Any other comments? I've got a couple. Councillor Pettingill just stole my thunder for the LGLA conference, which is totally fine. It was great to attend, and not a lot of people do this work, so it's really good to connect with folks working on all sorts of interesting things, as well as some newly elected people that are trying to find their way. It was a pleasure to be able to present on the panel with Ms. Glenday on the Code of Conduct work, and that triggered a lot of conversations sort of around the conference after. For me, they came with all sorts of stories about why particular municipalities would benefit from a strengthened code of conduct. So I'm happy to have been part both last term and this term of councils that are functioning at a high level and can have respectful debate. So it was great to sort of give pause and consider that. And then I was actually looking through my calendar to see what was noteworthy, and it's just been a lot of sort of just general meetings. But I think something that really stood out for me was on Thursday, so it was the 16th of February, I was able to attend the Poet Next Door event. This is their 7th edition. I don't know if anyone in this room's been yet. Highly encourage you to go to the next event. It does happen monthly. And it was at Zephyr, and just local people getting up and performing their poetry, and the people presenting and the audience were just so open to the experience, and everyone was so open and really vulnerable in what they shared there. It was a great event, and I really encourage you to go and check it out and as it comes forward. And just congratulations to the organizers there, and really creating a amazing community, very, very supportive, and giving a platform for people to bring their themselves and their perspectives forward in our community. And it's I'd never witnessed that before in Squamish. It was really remarkable. Yeah, and with that, and seeing no other updates, we'll move on to we don't have a motion to close tonight, so termination. Councillor Stoner and Councillor Greenlaw seconds. All those in favor. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody.